getting ready and prepared each day to go out and fight and take it?
Oh, I think he'll do good. I think he'll do very well as a manager for that team. He's got the right personality. He knows the game.
With Dan Wilson as the manager of the Mariners, it led me to reach out to Jeff Fassero, who had previously been on my show before, to provide opinions on his former teammate, Dan Wilson, and how he thinks he will do as manager. But before we get started, this show is brought to you by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is a mobile ticketing app for sporting events, concerts, and other events. They make the buying experience easier by the app ranking each ticket from 0 to 10 to see if you are getting a good deal, and you can see exactly where you are sitting. I regularly use that app, and I have had nothing but a fantastic experience with SeatGeek. Use my promo code RoofTopSports to get $20 off of your first purchase. Link to the code, app, and website will be in the description, so take advantage, and thank you. Jeff, how are we doing? How's everything been since that last show?
Everything's been good. I have no complaints. Just enjoying retirement still. I keep thinking about, after seeing Dan getting a manager's job, thinking about getting back in baseball again for a couple more years. Still feel young enough to go out and do it. Still like watching it and stuff. And I don't like seeing some of the stuff that goes on in baseball, but, I think some of those older guys could make some good adjustments for this game.
Is that something that you've considered, management?
No, I don't know about management. I'd rather be like a pitching coach somewhere again. I did it for a while, and, kind of still miss it at times. And there's other times I go, no, I got a vacation coming up. Don't know if I really want to do it, but it's kind of still in the blood.
Can't blame you with the whole vacation feeling. I mean, when you had long years of Major League Baseball and then there's retirement, I mean, I can't blame you one bit. And before we get into like the start of it, and for anyone that still is curious to know who Jeff Fassero is, he was actually one of the starting pitchers for the Seattle Mariners, along with Randy Johnson and Jamie Moyer from the years of 1997 through 1999. I was actually introduced to your name through this video game called All-Star Baseball 2000 featuring Derek Jeter. And what really got my attention was that forkball. And I actually do have a video game clip of you striking out a couple guys.
Forkball. Bottom looking. Coming up, Jason Giambi. Swing and a miss. Down he goes.
Oh, money.
Giambi didn't like that pitch. Neither did Tony Gwynn.
No, yeah. I remember you mentioned that you had some pretty good success against the more elite hitters, and which is kind of funny. And that when I was recording that footage, I couldn't get the first two guys out. They were getting like weird infield singles, but then once like Ben Grieve and Jason Giambi was up, they couldn't hit anything. So I guess the video game knows how you pitch exactly.
Follows you pretty good, I guess.
So you mentioned Tony Gwynn. The interesting thing is, these days you see video clips of guys like Randy Johnson and Greg Maddux talking about their approach to pitching when it came to guys like Tony Gwynn. Did you how successful you were against Tony?
Well, what's his lifetime batting average is what, 330 or so?
I think it's like 360 something.
He hit under 300 against me, so that's good success. I'm one of two guys that struck him out in 3 pitches. He couldn't distinguish between the sinker and the forkball for some reason. So I could use both against him. I didn't have to worry about throwing him a slider unless I just wanted to show him one. But it was pretty much just those 2 pitches. And he didn't want to strike out, so we just tried to put him in play. Sometimes he found holes, sometimes he didn't. But it's always a challenge to face a hitter like that.
That must have been surreal. I mean, I'm sure at the time when you were facing him, you obviously know the greatness of a dude like Tony Gwynn, right? So I'm sure that was a challenge when he's stepping into the box. I mean that guy was an automatic base hit. You know what I mean? But he was also a good bad ball hitter too, like mistake pitches up or even outside that. He just had an ability just to take what a pitcher was willing to give him and just go the other way.
Yeah, well, he wasn't like these guys, like what you see nowadays. He didn't try to pull everything. He just hit the ball where it was pitched. If it was in on him, he pulled it. If it was away from him, he took it the other way. I think his approach was everything's up the middle so he could adjust to wherever the ball was. And, that great approach. And for me, I tried to stay away from every hitter or in every hitter because I didn't want anything coming back up at me.
Hey, just out of curiosity, did you ever pitch to Junior or A-Rod in BP?
I pitched to him in real games.
Real games? Okay. Oh, that, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
When Junior was in Cincinnati,
Yeah.
let's see, where was I? At St. Louis, I think, at the time. And then A-Rod was in the American League. He was in Boston. Or was he in Boston? No.
Texas and New York.
Texas.
Yeah.
He was in Texas and New York when I pitched against him when I was in Boston.
Okay. Fair enough.
So, yeah. And I had pretty good success against both of them because I was the pitcher that would sit on the bench and study our own guys, too, in case I ever had to face them.
Yeah, that's generally what the greats did back in the day. They would keep notes. They would keep meticulous notes on hitters.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Dan Wilson and Jamie Mortar would do. That's what the legend was, anyways. Yeah, they would have a book.
They had a book on hitters and stuff like that. For some reason, I would just study my old pitching charts against them and see what I did. I'd keep them through the year, and I would study them and memorize what I'd done with them. And then, we'd have our meetings with the catchers and go over, and this is how we want to attack them and stuff like that. And it was pretty easy. I mean, Jamie was the same way, but he just kept in a book.
What was your first reaction when you heard that Dan Wilson was tabbed as the new Mariners manager? It was interesting though, because I think a lot of us here in Seattle would just assume that it was going to be an interim gig. It was unfortunate how the Scott Service ending, how that ended, and all of a sudden, like within a span of 24 hours, Dan Wilson was named.
First I didn't hear that Scott Service had gotten let go, and then Karen Moyer called my wife Kathy and said that Dan just got hired, and then Kathy told me that, and I was pretty excited for him. I'm glad to see it. I think he can do good things for that team. I mean, he knows the game, he understands the game, and I follow the stats more than I follow games, and I know the Mariners have a great pitching staff, and they are number 30 in batting, I believe, this year. White Sox are batting lower than the Mariners, or the Mariners are batting lower than the
Mariners
White Sox?
are actually batting lower.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Sox, yeah. We just got to the fact that the Mariners offense isn't exactly world beaters. My question is, as a pitcher, now not necessarily with the Mariners during your time, because that offense was just unbelievable. But there may have been a time in your career where you're with a team that didn't necessarily have that great of an offense. I mean, as a pitcher going out to the mound, knowing that you may get one, maybe two, if that, what's the mentality of a starting pitcher? Do you have to go out there believing that you have to be perfect in order to get a win or even keep your team in the ballgame?
Sometimes you do, but it's also the same thing. Like, let's say Randy goes out and starting a game, right? And Randy's going to give up 1 or 2 runs a game. So the offense doesn't think that they have to do as much as they need to do. So they might only get 2 or 3 runs. And, it's like, because I thought that in Montreal a couple years, because my ERA's in right around 3, high 2s. And, I was 9-9 in a team that was 40 games over 500. And I'm going, how can this be with an ERA like that and the offense we had? And you go back and look at all the numbers. Every game I pitched was like 3-2, 2-1, stuff like that. So, I mean, sometimes it's just the hitters kind of relax, knowing that it's going to be a quick game and there's not going to be a lot of action going, and then they fall into the same trap. I mean, I look at Castillo's got great numbers for Seattle right now, but see 11-10 or.
Everyone's pretty much hanging that 11-10 kind of record for pretty much the entire starting rotation.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to have an offense, but Castillo, he pitches quick and stuff like that, and you'd think the offense would want to get out there and do it. I don't know if did the hitting coach that was there too get fired?
Yes,
it was the offensive coordinator and the other one too, which is now why Edgar Martinez has now taken over.
So Edgar's in there? Well, that's good.
Edgar is the hitting coach.
That's right. I did hear that a couple days ago that Edgar took over. I told Kathy, I think Edgar got the job too, and she goes, "Oh, that's good." I mean, I think his philosophy of hitting, if he can get it into some of these younger kids, because there is some talent on that team. I think they can definitely turn it around. I mean, Dan knows the game. He caught the game. Catchers are in every pitch. They know, and I think that's why they make the ones that become good managers is because they've stayed in every game. They follow the game and understand what has to be done, move wise and stuff like that.
What was your experience working with Dan Wilson, and how was he as a teammate back in the 90s, and how was his leadership?
Working with Dan definitely a leader for the catchers. It was great working with him. I mean, he knew the game. I mean, there was times like, we would be on the same page, and I'd expect him to call a sign down, and this is when they could come visit us. And I would shake off because he actually knew what I'd want to throw, but he would come out in the mound and goes, "Batter just moved in the box. He's looking for this pitch. Let's do something different." So, okay. That's understanding the game, because as a pitcher, we can't see what they're doing, but he paid attention to every detail when he was back there, and his target was tiny. So, I mean, it made you focus on where you're going, where you're trying to throw the ball. I think, he was actually kind of quiet back in the day, because if you think about it, Jay was there, Junior was there. Sure. There's a lot of people around, but Dan, as far as getting with the pitchers and doing stuff with the pitchers, Dan was a very good leader.
What is your current relationship with Dan?
So relationship is basically Christmas cards back and forth. I don't see him too much. I think the last time I saw him was about 4 years ago, maybe, at their complex. It had to be long that. No, that'd be about right. My last year coaching. We were over there playing their AAA team. Or no, I was playing still big league camp. And I saw him. He was down there doing some work with the catchers. So that's the last time I really got to talk to him face to face. But, like I said, it's Christmas cards. I'll see some stuff every once in a while that he's posted on Facebook or something like that. But we haven't had a whole lot of communication other than that way. I need to get his number. I can call Jamie and get his number, because I need to talk to him just to congratulate him on getting the job. I think it's a great. He's been, ever since he's been playing in the Mariners, he's been with the Mariners for everything that he's done. So, he takes time out in the spring and he comes down here and he works with kids and does stuff for the kids. Even when he wasn't on the bench or anything like that, he still takes that time out and does stuff with them. So, yeah, I need to. I imagine it's kind of slowed down for him, so it might be best that I can call him now or get in touch with him and congratulate him.
Not only that, but maybe give him some kind of, motivational speech for him, I guess, because the team has unfortunately gone on quite the losing skid, and it's not exactly the losing skid that we needed at this time of the season, especially with a possible playoff run, which is unfortunately falling apart, which leads to that next question. Now, he is actually supposedly to be the permanent manager of the Mariners, actually not going to be an interim manager at this time right now, but regardless of how this season goes and how 2025 looks for the Mariners, how do you see him as a manager going forward? Because we've seen former teammates like Brett Boone, Jeff Nelson, and former manager Lou Piniella say nothing but fantastic things about Dan Wilson.
Oh, I think he'll do good. I think he'll do very well as a manager for that team. He's got the right personality. He knows the game. I mean, I watched some of the game yesterday. Did they lose yesterday to Oakland?
They did, yeah.
And I watched his interview after the game because I wanted to see how he's doing. And, it was very articulate about what happened, and he's talked about their struggles and having walk-off home runs beat you. It's hard. I mean, was that back-to-back days that happened, or was it a base hit for a walk-off home run the night before?
It was the Angels game on Saturday. That was the walk-off. Then Sunday was just the loss, and then Monday was the walk-off.
Another walk-off. Yeah. those are tough games. I mean, you're in the game. The starting pitcher threw a good game. He gave up the 4 runs in 1 inning. Other than that, it was great. I mean, he kept him in the game, gave him a chance to win.
Yep.
But and he just talked about it. He goes, they're playing hard, and that's what you want. As long as he sees them playing hard, he's not going to complain about it. I mean, it's the way the ball bounces sometimes. It's just unfortunate events that happen in baseball.
We mentioned Lou Piniella just a few moments ago, and you would have to think that temperament because Dan has already came out in the press and said that sometimes he kind of had to be a little bit of a jerk to the pitchers, especially if they were shaking him off a little too much, right? And I would assume that temperament comes from the guy that he played under for all those years, right? So everybody asks that question, like, do catchers make the best managers? But I would think in the case of Dan Wilson, he's kind of he's got that temperament like Lou. You know what I mean? Like, do you think? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, do you see that?
I don't know. I don't know if I see him throwing his hat down on the ground and kicking across the field or anything like that. But yeah, he can be fiery. I mean, he's gonna be fiery. He'll stand up for his players, and that's basically what Lou did. I mean, if you have Lou as a manager, and because he stood up for all his players, no matter what the situation was, even if he thought you were wrong or whatever, and ump was giving you shit, he had your back all the time. And I think Dan's going to have all his players' backs. He'll stand up for them, and he'll be hard in the clubhouse when he needs to be hard in the clubhouse. I don't think there's enough guys to get, nowadays are as hard on their players. I think the older managers are. I think like Bochy was. I think Baker was. When they need to be. It's not like it's an everyday event. It's when they need to be. There needs to be a wake-up call sometimes.
Absolutely. So I gotta ask this question. So in October of '96, you get traded to Seattle, and I'm sure going through that process of going through the trade, going through a trade, and then you see that you're going to Seattle. There's Junior, there's A-Rod, there's Randy, Edgar, and I'm sure as a pitcher yourself, that must have been an awesome feeling to know that you have an offense behind you. So there's going to be some comfortability with that. But then in '99, you get traded to Texas, and then following the '99 season, you become a free agent. Was there ever an opportunity for you to come back to Seattle in free agency? Was that something that you had considered, or did that never cross your mind in free agency?
No, because I got calls like after that '99 season from a few teams right away, and one of them was Boston, and Boston called because Kerrigan was there. He was my pitching coach in Montreal, and I thought that might be the best fit for me right now since I struggled so much in '99, and so it was pretty easy to go there for the year. I wanted to go back there at going after that season. The Cubs came in and offered me a 2-year deal, and Boston still wanted to do 1. And at the age I was, getting close to the possible retirement, I said, my wife and I discussed it, and I said, let's take the 2-year deal, and we'll see what happens after that. But no, I never had an opportunity to come back to Seattle.
That must have been tough being a lefty in Fenway Park, though. Green Monster.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty daunting out there, but really, if it's a line drive, it's a single. Just don't let them pop it up.
Yeah, especially to left field or even right field.
But I was mainly a sinker ball, fork ball pitcher, so I got a lot of ground balls. So it really, I didn't look at it that way.
Well, speaking of ground balls, I got to ask you, man. You played with A-Rod early, early in his career, like I think it was year 2 and year 3. And even from the beginning, it was obvious that he was going to be a wizard in the field, man. How much of a luxury was that, having that guy behind you turning double plays?
I mean, the whole infield was good when I was there. I mean, it's always nice. Shortstop's the biggest thing you have. I mean, I will say this: the best shortstop I had was when I got invited to spring training in St. Louis, and Ozzie Smith was back there, and I get to throw ground balls, and he was getting, I got to pitch like one time, and he was playing still, and just seeing him back there, I go, wow, that was great. But A-Rod came up, and that, the range and the arm that he had was great. I mean, him and Cora made a great combination for double plays, and like I said, being a ground ball pitcher, you having that infield, especially some people that can move on AstroTurf.
Yeah.
That's
That fork ball couldn't hurt to cause those ground balls.
No, that's what I said. Sinker ball and fork ball, ground ball pitches.
Yeah, and of course the Kingdom was essentially a homer dome. I mean, routine fly balls had a tendency to go out there, but the spine of that defense was amazing, right? Really, like when you sit back and you think about it, how great that was. I mean, you had Wilson behind the plate, Cora and A-Rod up the middle, and of course you had Junior in center field. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's a once in a lifetime. That's a once in a lifetime defense.
I think that the only position that was never settled when I was up there was left field.
Never was, because they had, if I remember, at the start of '97, it was Lee Tinsley and Rich Amaral. They were platooning, and then Lou calls up Jose Cruz Jr., and then that trade happens, unfortunately, and then it got flipped to Roberto Kelly for 97 for the playoffs, and then it went to Glenn Allen Hill for like a few, and then Butch Husky.
I still think that trade was still a good trade, because one of the things that the Mariners needed in '97 was somebody in the back end of the bullpen to really lock things down, and so they got it. They got it.
Yeah, we were a little weak at the back end of the bullpen that year.
Unfortunately, unfortunately it was with Charlton and Ayala, and unfortunately at one point they were the highest leverage out of them and maybe any other years. I mean, if only they had like anyone else. But another question I just wanted to get to was, we've seen a lot of catchers become managers, or even good managers. Like, I think of Yogi Berra. He was actually a manager at a few seasons. Then we had Scott Service eventually became a manager. And then if we can think of other names, I think Joe Torre was possibly a catcher, and then he became manager. So do you agree that catchers may be a good stepping stone to be a manager?
Yeah, I think so. I think I said earlier that catchers are in the game. They're in the game for every pitch that they're back there for, and they know what the manager wants. They understand when teams are going to do hit and runs. They got an idea of how that's going to go. So I think a catcher will always make a good manager, just for the point of knowing the game and being in tune with the game and what's going on, and maybe thinking ahead a little bit.
Yeah. I was gonna jump in there and say that, for the most part, they're the quarterback of the defense. I mean, for the most part, I'm sure they, back in those days, I mean, there was an era there post 2000 where young catchers were getting their signals from the dugout. But back in the day, I mean, that was, it was required to be able to carry a pitching staff. If you were going to get called up to the big leagues as a catcher, you had to have those intangibles as a catcher to know exactly what pitches to throw in what sequence and, in what order. And, but of course that only comes from experience. I mean, we were talking about how you kept a book, how, Dan and Jamie kept a book as well too. So, I mean, it's nice having those, those internal scouting reports of players.
Yeah, because when you talk about that and you go over it with the catchers, you're doing a scouting report on you pitching. A lot of the reports that come in are just general pitching. And let's say that there's a guy that can't hit a right-handed slider. Well, I didn't have a right-handed slider. How am I going to get him out if that's the only pitch he can't hit? So, you got to talk with Dan and go over it with him and go, okay, so obviously he's a good hitter, a ball down and away from a right-hander. So my sinker might not be playing well with him, so he might be a guy we have to attack hard inside, So the communication between the pitcher and catcher is like spot on. And he was really good about controlling the tempo and how you felt. Like, say you give up a couple hits on how you might run out there and say, okay, we just need to get a double play right here. You'll have 2 outs and maybe a guy on third. It's just get a ground ball and do stuff like that. So he understood how to control a game from behind the plate.
Hey, Jeff, lastly for me, I got to ask you, I'm sure you're aware of the epidemic of arm injuries in Major League Baseball.
Yes.
The Mariners themselves had another one this the spring training when Matt Brash went down because I guess it was because overuse last year. But that being said, former Mariner pitcher Jamie Moyer has been quoted a few times by saying that back in that era, pitchers were throwing all the time. Right, whether it was starts or whether it was bullpens or whether it was just long toss, they were always keeping arms loose. And there was it didn't seem to have that many arm injuries, specifically the elbow injuries. Back in your playing days. Just out of curiosity, man, what are your thoughts on that?
I just think like I agree with him because like coaching, I would try to get guys. They would pitch a game and maybe they'd throw 75 pitches in a game of starter. I said, you need to go out and play catch, stretch it, get the blood flowing, get it going again. No, I need a day off, and I'll just show my side. I'll go do some lifting and stuff like that. I think the lifting during the season's another reason. I think they overdo it. I mean, I worked out and lifted, but it was not like I was in the off season. I was just lifting to maintain my strength. And these guys are in there. I've walked in and seen it. I mean, you got pitchers doing dumbbell bench presses with 80-pound dumbbells in each hand. I go, they don't need this. What are we trying to build here? We're not building bodybuilders. We need elastic muscles and stuff like that.
That's exactly right.
And, there's not a lot of coaches that play at the big league level in baseball anymore. And they don't teach them. They're not getting taught what they need to do theoretically. I mean, it's hard to see because, I mean, I was watching some of the Reds game the other day and they got like 5 guys out right now. 5 main guys. I mean, and that's been happening every year to that team. And there's a couple other teams. It's the same thing. I don't know what their system's doing. It's kind of hard to watch. I mean, you're paying a lot of guys a lot of money to keep getting hurt.
Yeah, and I seem to think that it's just the way that pitchers are developed these days. For whatever reason, there's an obsession for velocity and spin rates, where guys are getting called up throwing triple digits on a fastball, and for me, I'm like, why are you throwing 100%? You know what I mean? Like especially for a starter, like the idea is to get through the 7th inning. And if you're throwing max every single pitch, I mean, you're going to be gassed by the 5th inning, not to mention your pitch counts are going up.
That's the key. It's about throwing max effort all the time. It's not about pitching. It's about throwing. How hard can I throw the ball? I got to throw this pitch as hard as I can. And, instead of just like backing off 4 or 5 miles an hour or 3 miles an hour and pitching at that thing, knowing that you could go up 4 or 5 miles an hour when you need to. Like, say you want to throw that high fastball by somebody, you guys just don't pitch down. I don't think they pitch down in the zone enough. They've been ingrained that you got to pitch high and hard up top with a 4-seam spin and the spin rate. I mean, they don't. I think it might even go all the way back to A-ball teams where they don't teach the kids to pitch. You got to pitch. You got to get guys out. How do you get guys out?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just looking at, this guy throws 100 miles an hour, we're going to just move him up to the next level. Then he's still throwing 100. We're going to move him up to the next level. He's not really pitching well and stuff like that. Everybody's been enamored by the numbers, like exit velocity off a bat, how hard's the
Right.
guy throwing. And I mean, I've seen enough studies to know that there's guys that I played with that threw harder than just as hard as these guys are throwing now. I mean, Kerry Wood came up throwing 95, 96 miles an hour, and but he was measured at home plate. If you measure him where they measure him out of the arm speed now, he was 100 miles an hour every pitch, 101, 102.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, as a coach, I would watch guys. I would stand at home plate and watch these guys throw, getting warmed up for a game. And they're letting it go, and they're saying he's 98, 99. I'm going, this is getting to home
Yeah.
plate, and it's not 98, 99 when it's getting to me. It's about maybe 94, 93.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the way they've changed numbers to make it look better, I don't think it served a good purpose for pitchers.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And, there's as great as the Mariners starting rotation is, there's a lot of idiosyncrasies about certain pitchers that just drive me crazy. A lot of them, for whatever reason, just are afraid to pitch to contact. You know what I mean? For fear of being taken deep. And it's like, well, you got a defense behind you. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to strike everybody out. You know what I mean? It's yeah.
Yeah, there's just a different philosophy. It's like like I told you with Dan coming out and say, so what, they got 2 hits right now. Let's get a ground ball, get a double play. You're looking at your best pitch to get a ground ball. For me, it might have been a sinker. It might have been a forkball right off the get-go. I'm going to get him roll the ball over, hit it on the ground. They don't think like that. I even tried to teach guys, like when I was coaching, in the AA and AAA, they would give up like a leadoff double and there'd be a big panic in their face. I said, throw something down the way, let the guy hit the ball over, and so what, the guy goes to third base. You don't have to pitch to the next guy. You can set up a double play, or he can force him to swing at something bad. Instead of looking at all the negatives, which what I think they do a lot now. That's why they're afraid of contact.
It's the things that I have noticed, like when I've been watching Mariners games this entire season, there are times like you said that there's times where a double happens and we were like, okay, so they give up the double. So I look at the lineup and it's like, okay, this is a big hitter. Let's just try to intentionally walk to cause that double play, and it doesn't happen, and then possibly disaster strikes. And it's kind of telling because although like pitchers like George Kirby, Bryce Miller, and Luis Castillo, although they don't necessarily walk batters, it is unfortunately made up with home runs. So do you sometimes feel that sometimes just walking naturally is just part of the game, like it's part of a strategy, not something to like completely like look down upon?
No, there's strategies. There's times to walk hitters and stuff like that. If you don't match up well against the guy, and you got a guy in scoring position, you can throw pitches to see if he'll chase something and get himself out, but you don't have to give in to him and try to get him out. That's the thing called pitching, where instead of just throwing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It seems to be what it has been. Yeah.
Yeah. I was, obviously we're not back in the day, and a lot of teams these days run on advanced analytics. That is also how the Mariners are operated. They've sunk a lot of resources in their analytics department, and I think that sometimes that's what drives certain situations where sometimes there's a lot of common sense involved in baseball. You know what I mean? Where especially if you've been through it, and there's just a lot of times where like involving a walk. I mean, there's certain situations and tendencies when it comes to getting through an inning, and I don't know, man. I just think that sometimes this team has lacked common sense, and that's what to me that's what I'm hoping that Dan brings, is that old school common sense to a baseball game, where we were talking about like sometimes it's actually okay to walk somebody to get a double play.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But you got to remember, like, a lot of these kids have been taught that they got to throw a 4-seam high, and that's not a double play ball. So, their philosophy isn't the same as what our philosophy used to be. It's spin rate, throw it up high, and if you miss down a little bit, it goes out of the ballpark. And that's where you're seeing like the home runs come in those situations, even if the guy's trying to pitch around him.
Yeah.
It's easier to miss down low than it is to try to pitch up high consistently, especially when you're throwing off a mound.
100%.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's actually all the questions. So I wanted to get to the fun part of the show. Is I did show you the commercials, at least one commercial, like before the show started, but I'm going to show you 3 Mariners commercials, 97, 98, and 99, and you just happen to be on all of them. And I'd like to get your reaction out of it and what was the shooting like and all that kind of stuff. Here is the one from 97. This was pitchers batting practice.
This year, our pitchers get to hit in National League ballparks, so I'm working with them with a little extra BP. Put your hands up just a little bit higher, Jeff. Hey, I gotta tell you, they're looking pretty good. Hey, bring it down. Throw them strikes, would you?
Sorry, Mr. Buhner.
You did get a hit in that season, so I think that practice actually did pay off. So
Yeah.
I guess we were to thank Jay Buhner for that session. But
Great
take me
coaching
back
by
to
him.
the days of like the shooting and the commercials, and what was that like?
I mean, it was fun. You know, when you got to do it with, when we had like 3 or 4 guys, 5 guys doing it and stuff like that, it was fun. I mean, you know, and the fans enjoy them because they would say stuff to you when you're like at the field about your commercials and things like that. I mean, it is something the Mariners have done well.
They really do, yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the things I always look forward to before the season even starts, whether the team is going to be good or bad, is, well, at least there's the commercials to watch and they're entertaining for at least the most part. But yeah, here's 98 and it's called, yeah, we're going to say something, Steve?
Yeah, no, I was going to ask you, Jeff, were you a good hitter in your career?
No.
No.
I made the one mistake. I think I could have been a better hitter because you take batting practice. I can hit batting practice, but it's not the same because of the velocity.
Sure.
And after coaching and standing down by the catcher and watching guys throw pitches, they say you got like 2 seconds, but you don't realize how long that 2 seconds is when you're actually standing down there. And I said I probably could have hit better if I would have went and stood in and watched guys throw their actual bullpens and stuff like that and got a better timing for things. Because in the National League, I made sure I could bunt.
Yeah.
That's something that the Mariners didn't want to do because there was actually a situation where, so the Mariners were playing with 2 catchers, Cal Raleigh and Mitch Garver. They had Cal Raleigh as the DH, Mitch Garver as the catcher, and he got beamed and injured and had to get pulled out of the game. And now that you have to put Cal Raleigh out of DH to be a catcher, that means Luis Castillo was forced to be a batter. And what I remember watching, he was actually instructed not to even lay down a bunt or even take a swing. So that was really, I thought that was really bizarre. But what would your reaction have been to that?
Why give him a free out? Who knows? He puts the ball in play, something could happen.
Right. Right.
And they had a runner in scoring position too. So if you just laid down a bunt or just swung something, could have at least advanced the runner.
Yeah. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
If I was pitching like still in the game and starting in Montreal and it was like the 7th or 8th inning, I might be going up to the stand for 3 pitches too, just because I don't want to run and use extra energy that late in the game. But if it's like early in the game and you're starting,
for sure.
Yeah. Well, I just actually happened to take a look at your stats, but another way to explain how great 94 was going for the Expos, I did look at your stat line. You did get a triple, so that's another way to say that's how much it should have been fate that the Expos should have won that World Series. But do you actually remember that triple?
Yeah, I actually threw 8 2/3 that game with no hit ball too.
Yeah.
Woo!
Against Pittsburgh, I hit it down the right field line in Montreal, and it hit in the corner, and it rolled around. The outfielder missed it and rolled around, so I got the 3rd.
Yeah, that must have been a very exciting moment, especially for a pitcher. Like, especially that they don't bat as often, and they certainly don't really bat anymore. Must have been one of the more exciting moments in your career.
Yeah, I think having the pitcher hit adds a little character to the game. It makes the manager think a little bit more.
Yeah.
For sure. What am I doing in this situation?
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
Jeff, hey, I do have to ask you because you brought up '94. Obviously, that Montreal Expos team, the coulda of the '94 Expos team was derailed by the player strike of '94. What what was it like in that clubhouse?
Clubhouse is great. I mean, we went to the ballpark every day, knowing that we were going to win that day. And if we lost, it really didn't matter to us because we knew we were coming back the next day. We were going to win. I mean, there was never a feeling like once we got on that roll, like first part of May, and just took off. It was like, okay, we're going to the ball. It didn't matter who was coming in. It could have been Philadelphia. It could have been Atlanta. It could have been the Dodgers. It didn't matter at that point who was coming in. We knew we were going to beat them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we were stacked all the way through. I mean, Pedro. Kenny, me.
Yep.
Kenny,
Larry Walker.
Yeah.
Our bullpen, it was the best bullpen I ever had.
Yeah.
I mean, Wetland was the closer. Rojas was down there. Jeff Shaw.
Yeah.
Tim Scott. I mean, and we only had 5 guys down there, too. We didn't have 16 guys to choose from like they do now.
Yeah. And, then, of course, the player strike hits, and that's all she wrote.
Yeah. I mean, I always look back at it and go, what if we would have done something different and played until later in September and then went on strike? If the owners of the White Sox and the Expos would have been such hardliners, or if they would have wanted to get into the playoffs and the World Series.
Lots were at stake in that year because it was Matt Williams going for 62. Don Mattingly was trying to chase for that championship, and that lo and behold, that was one of his final chances. And of course, the Mariners were the ones that fortunately for us, ended it, but not so much for him. And then also there was that Expos situation.
Yeah. And was Tony Gwynn chasing 400 that year too?
He was. He ended at 39. He ended at 394, and scaringly before the 394, he was actually at 385. So he was actually struggling, and then towards the end, or if some would like to say the middle of it, he was actually climbing up to 394, and then as soon as he was hot, it ended.
Yep.
And now I want to.
I was going to say that, and then, who knows what a championship for Montreal would have done for the morale of that city, especially when it comes to baseball. And who knows, maybe they get maybe they get that stadium that they had always wanted to build, and we don't have the Washington. Yeah. And we don't have the Washington Nationals. We have the Montreal Expos.
That would be nice.
Yeah. That would be
for sure. Well, here is next commercial. We've got 1998 titled The Brush.
Guilty! You get the brush for a week.
The brush.
Not the brush. Oh, man, the brush.
In Judge Jay Buhner's clubhouse courtroom, justice is swift and harsh.
Make sure you get that spot between the antlers.
That one's my all-time favorite out of all of them. But yeah, take me to that one.
Yeah, that's great.
That is great. I mean, Jay was perfect to be the judge and make the rulings for that stuff. So, I mean, it was an easy commercial. It wasn't hard at all. Jay was perfect for that role. Segui looking lost was great.
I like when Rich Amaral gave him the broom of the face of like, yeah, you messed up, man, but here's the broom.
Yeah,
or the brush.
That was fun, and watching him pass that brush off to Segui, and Segui goes, I don't know what's going on.
I always got the impression that Jay Buhner was the guy that kept everything loose in those in those clubhouses.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he did a great job with that, and that's what made it so great. In our clubhouse there was no animosity at all. I mean, you got the stars that were in there with Edgar and Alex and Junior and stuff, and Jay in his own right. I mean, there was no animosity in there at all.
Yeah. And I also imagine, because in '97, that was the Mariners' first 90-win season in franchise history. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And with the those type of wins comes expectations, playoff expectations. So you need a guy in there to keep things loose, so nobody gets tight.
And that's something that the Mariners are missing is they did have someone not like Jay Buhner's like caliber kind of thing, or necessarily his personality as much, but they did have Eugenio Suarez, and he was the one that kept everything loose. And
Yeah.
I do believe that he was partially the reason why Julio was able to perform to what we would like to see now. But that was one of the predictions I actually feared, was the moment they traded him, that was Julio was going to take some kind of a downturn because he doesn't have that kind of, unfortunately, doesn't have that leadership presence. So it really does prove, like people like Jay Buhner prove that you need those kind of people. And even though they both struck out a huge number of times, they are able to make it up with everything else, like defense, great arm, and a bat.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I'm down here in Arizona right now, and Suarez has been on fire the second half.
Yep.
Yep.
Very much. It hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's baseball, though.
Yeah.
That's the unfortunate part of the game. It's I don't, unless you're signed to a contract like Julio Rodriguez is currently, where you're going to be in town for at least 10 years. For the most part, you can't get comfortable in Major League Baseball.
No, not at all. Not nowadays, because there's certain teams that are going to pay for certain guys, and the other guys that start making money, they're going to move them.
Well, now here is the final commercial. This is 1999. It's called Grocery Shopping, and you had to go grocery shopping for a day for whatever reason. So here's exactly what you did.
Sorry.
Wild pitch, aisle 4.
So explain that one, like apple shopping and wild throw an egg.
Yeah. I mean, we had to shop for something I could throw. Apple's the closest thing to a baseball. And the egg's just for fun.
Yeah,
I wanted to throw a few more. I actually wanted to throw one to Marzano, but they wouldn't let me. Or he didn't want to catch it, one or the other.
One or the other. Yeah, that I actually had for as far back as I can remember with Mariner commercials, I can't recall ever seeing that one. So when just seeing that for the first time, I get a kick out of that. That's great.
Yeah, like I said, those commercials are fun to do. And they only made it. It was like basically doing one. Everybody had to be like in one, and that was it. And they were fun.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you've made it. You've made it in Seattle when you get on the commercial. Yeah.
That one in the store though was like at 10:30 at night because they wanted to make sure there's nobody in the store. Everybody,
they didn't want to get.
Everybody in there was a prop or an extra. So yeah. So
I don't think anyone would want to get caught in the crossfire with eggs and an apple, especially the apple. That would hurt quite a bit.
Yeah, that wouldn't feel so good.
No, it would not.
Can you throw a sinker or a forkball with an apple?
I can grip it. I don't know if it's going to sink or what it's going to do. Right now, with the way my shoulder feels, I don't know that I could throw much of anything right now.
And thank you for watching the video with Jeff Fassero on Dan Wilson. If you would like to see the other show that I had with Jeff Fassero, here's the link to that. Or if you'd like to relive the 1997 season where Jeff Fassero was a part of, here's that link as well.